The cameras flashed. The crowd froze. And just like that, millions of listeners were absolutely paralyzed. A solemn voice crackles through the speakers and says the king is dead. Or, well, so they thought.
Yeah, I mean, it is the absolute nightmare scenario for literally any broadcaster. It's the exact event they train for relentlessly, just going off entirely by accident.
Welcome to Starscope Report. Join Jordan and Jamie as they uncover Hollywood drama, music industry shakeups, and viral influencer scandals. From red carpet surprises to social media controversies, we dive deep into the stories behind the fame.
And today we are taking you behind the curtain to dissect this completely bizarre accidental announcement of King Charles III's death by a UK radio station.
Exactly. We are looking past the headlines today, diving into a stack of sources from The Guardian, Newsweek, CTV News, and even some actual broadcasting textbooks. We want to explore the hidden, highly secretive media protocols designed to handle a royal passing.
Right, and more importantly, the absolute chaos that erupts when these ironclad automated systems just spectacularly misfire.
Because, a broadcasting glitch like this doesn't just happen in a vacuum.
No, not at all. It exposes this massive hidden infrastructure of, Cold War-era alarms, networked studio lights, and the intense psychological weight placed on the people sitting behind those mixing boards.
Let's set the scene for how this whole illusion of tragedy unfolded. Because it's wild. It's a quiet Tuesday afternoon. You're driving, maybe listening to some classic tunes, just enjoying the rhythm of an ordinary day.
Right, just a normal Tuesday.
And without warning, the regular programming is just severed. An official-sounding voice hijacks the airwaves with these chilling words. His Majesty King Charles III has passed away. This actually happened on the UK-based station Radio Caroline.
Which is just, to really grasp why this sent an immediate shockwave through the listenership, we have to look at where the public's head was at.
Oh, absolutely. The context is everything here.
Exactly. Because back in February of 2024, King Charles was diagnosed with cancer. And recently, he shared that his treatment schedule was being reduced.
Right. The palace stated he was responding exceptionally well, moving into a precautionary phase, I think they called it.
Yeah, but even with those positive updates, the underlying public anxiety was still super potent. Rumors continuously circulate in the tabloids and online, so when a broadcaster abruptly cuts into a music block to announce his death, the public is already primed to believe it.
It registers as entirely plausible.
It does. People just accepted it immediately.
And the contrast between that collective gasp of horror from the listeners and the actual reality of that Tuesday is incredibly surreal.
Oh, it's almost a comedy of errors.
Seriously. Because while the radio waves were actively mourning him, King Charles was very much alive and just going about his day.
Right. He was in Northern Ireland, wasn't he?
Yes. He and Queen Camilla were right in the middle of a highly publicized official visit. He was literally at the Titanic Quarter in Belfast, touring Titanic distillers to learn about whiskey making. Yeah, he's checking out a digital learning hub, meeting with the First Minister. He is out there shaking hands, smiling for the cameras, while simultaneously a radio station is playing God Save the King as a somber memorial.
It's the ultimate disconnect, between physical reality and media automation, because the listeners of Radio Caroline heard a pre-recorded emergency message stating that, as a mark of formal respect, the station was suspending normal programming.
The national anthem played, and then what happened next is just crazy.
Complete dead air.
Just silence.
Total silence for roughly 15 minutes.
Any radio producer will tell you that 15 seconds of dead air is panic-inducing. But 15 minutes... that is a lifetime in broadcasting. It's the sound of a system completely abandoning the ship.
And the fallout was instantaneous, obviously. Social media immediately flared up with genuine distress.
People were panicking.
They were. But, the internet is practically a living organism that self-corrects really rapidly.
Yeah.
Within minutes, that distress mutated into this massive wave of satirical memes once people cross-referenced the news.
Right, they realized the king was currently examining whiskey barrels in Belfast.
Exactly. So the station manager of Radio Caroline, Peter Moore, was forced to issue a highly public, deeply apologetic statement. He blamed a, quote, computer error at their main studio in Malden, Essex.
He said it accidentally triggered their automated royal death protocol.
Yeah, which sounds so simple when you just call it a computer error.
I have to push back on that phrase, though. Computer error is being used as a shield here. We tend to visualize these automated broadcast systems like a massive, intricate domino setup where a computer glitch is just a rogue gust of wind knocking it over.
Right, like an oopsie.
Exactly. But that's the wrong way to look at it. It's actually more like a dead man's switch on a high-speed locomotive.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
These systems are rigged with heavy fail-safes. Right?
Yeah.
They're designed to automatically take over and stop a disaster if the human operator is incapacitated. But if a sensor simply misfires, the train slams on the emergency brakes for no reason, throwing everyone through the windshield.
Yeah, the automated response is the disaster.
Right, so how does a macro physically trigger an obituary sequence for a head of state without a human authorizing that final step?
Well, that vulnerability is exactly what makes modern broadcast automation so terrifying. Modern radio relies on complex play-out software. These are systems that map out every single second of a 24-hour broadcast cycle.
So there's no room for deviation.
Zero. And these royal death protocols are loaded into the system as dormant priority tracks. They're essentially just waiting in the digital shadows.
Lurking there.
Exactly. What likely happened wasn't a DJ leaning on the wrong physical fader board. It was a failure in the logic gate of the playout system. A line of code essentially commanded the system to execute the highest priority emergency override.
So it did exactly what it was built to do.
Flawlessly. It initiated the pre-recorded announcement perfectly, flawlessly triggered the anthem, and flawlessly executed the mandated silence. It just did it on a random Tuesday.
It's a perfect execution of an absolute disaster.
Right.
And Moore even mentioned in his apology that they were immediately disabling these standby recordings to revert back to human common sense. But to understand why this glitch was even possible, you have to look at the massive secret protocols the media holds in readiness.
Oh, it goes so deep.
And what happens when those fail? Wait till you hear what came next. If you're loving these twists and behind-the-scenes secrets, make sure you're subscribed. We've got even crazier stories ahead.
Yeah, because the architecture of royal death in the media is just staggering. It operates on a scale most people never see. Broadcasters don't just have a folder of sad songs on a desktop somewhere.
They maintain secret Cold War-era alarms.
Yes. And highly specific, pre-selected music playlists that are integrated directly into their studio hardware, ready to deploy at a literal moment's notice.
The planning is meticulous and spans decades. I mean, when Queen Elizabeth passed away, we watched Operation London Bridge unfold with this chilling, flawless precision.
It was almost eerie how perfect it was.
It really was. And currently, the plan for King Charles is codenamed Operation Menai Bridge. That's right. The serious logistical groundwork for Menai Bridge began the literal day after the Queen's funeral in September 2022. And given the King's recent health updates, those logistical blueprints are being constantly refined.
They have to be.
It dictates everything from the movement of the coffin to the exact phrasing news anchors are allowed to use on television.
But the most fascinating part is how that macro-level government planning filters down into the micro-level engineering of every single television and commercial radio station in the country.
It touches everything.
It really does. The procedures for what they call a Category 1 royal, which includes the King, the Queen, and the Prince of Wales, are incredibly strict.
And the mechanisms they use to enforce this are straight out of a spy thriller. A lot of commercial stations are equipped with these blue obit lights installed directly in their studios.
It's blue lights, yeah.
But wait, how does that actually work? How does Buckingham Palace effectively reach into an independent rock station in Manchester and physically turn on a blue light?
It's a brilliant piece of network engineering, honestly. Historically, this relied on inaudible, subaudible tones embedded beneath the audio of the national news feed.
Wait, tones you can't even hear.
Exactly. The independent station's broadcast board is programmed to constantly listen for that specific hidden frequency. If a Category 1 death occurs, the central hub transmits the tone.
Oh, wow.
When the local board hears it, it physically trips a relay switch that turns on the flashing blue light in the DJ booth.
That is wild.
Today, it's often handled via IP-based multicast triggers over the internet, but the principle is the exact same. It is an automated visual command from the top down.
So you're a DJ playing a high-energy pop track, maybe some Taylor Swift, and suddenly this blue light starts strobing. You have to immediately kill the party and transition the entire tone of the station.
Immediately.
And they don't leave the music choice up to the DJ's discretion either, do they?
Not at all. The music is strictly categorized and preloaded. Stations maintain distinct playlists for these events,
Right.
and they are explicitly labeled.
Right, like Mood 1 and Mood 2.
Exactly. Mood 2 is designated for sad news, but Mood 1 is the saddest possible music. Somber instrumental tracks, slow tempos, zero lyrical ambiguity.
Just absolute depression.
Pretty much. In the UK radio industry, it's actually an inside joke that if you ever hear a specific, mournful electronic track playing on a daytime top 40 station, you don't even need to hear the news bulletin.
You just know.
Yeah, you should immediately turn on the television because a national catastrophe has occurred.
The BBC takes this even further, though. They don't just rely on blue lights. They have a legendary, mythologized alarm system known as RATS, the Radio Alert Transmission System.
RATS, I love that acronym.
It's amazing. It was originally engineered during the Cold War, designed to withstand a direct attack on the nation's infrastructure. It ensures that even if physical transmitters were taken offline, a signal could still reach the surviving broadcast hubs to warn the public.
Like nuclear winter type stuff.
Exactly. It is so rarely used that most current BBC staff have never actually heard it triggered in a real-world scenario. The internal dark humor joke is that RATs actually stands for Royal About to Snuff It.
Which is terrible, but hilarious. The psychological weight this infrastructure places on the broadcasters, though, is immense.
But
For decades, the BBC would bring their news teams in on quiet Sunday mornings strictly to run morbid dress rehearsals.
just practicing tragedy.
Literally, they would sit down and practice announcing that the Queen Mother had choked on a fishbone or that a senior royal had been involved in a fatal car crash.
Good Lord.
I know. They weren't just testing the microphones, they were rehearsing the mechanics of tragedy. They had to practice keeping their voices steady, maintaining the correct somber pitch, and flawlessly operating the transition from regular programming into those Mood 1 playlists.
But this is where I really have to question the entire premise of these systems today. We are talking about Cold War era, subaudible tones, flashing blue studio lights, and rehearsed Sunday morning tragedy drills.
Yeah, it feels a bit vintage.
Does any of this actually control the flow of information in modern times? If something catastrophic happens to a Category 1 royal today, a nurse, a bystander, or a palace staffer is going to leak it.
Whoa, without a doubt.
Twitter, or X, is going to have the news trending globally before the central broadcast hub even finishes warming up the IP trigger for the blue light. The idea that a radio station can cleanly break the news to an unaware public feels like an absolute obsolete fantasy.
I see why it looks obsolete, totally. But I think you're missing the core function of the protocol. It's not about being the first to break the news anymore. It's about institutional legitimacy.
Okay, explain that.
Well, the monarchy relies entirely on controlled, majestic pageantry to maintain its aura. Yes, a rumor might explode on social media, but in an era of deepfakes and AI-generated misinformation, the public still looks for the anchor of authority.
So they have the official stamp.
Exactly. The Crown demands the black edge notice physically pinned to the gates of Buckingham Palace. They demand the simultaneous, dignified newsflash across the Press Association. The independent networks aren't trying to beat Twitter. They are trying to enforce a pristine 20th century protocol of grief onto a chaotic 21st century digital reality. It's about maintaining the illusion of order.
Well, that tension between the illusion of order and the reality of human error is exactly what causes these systems to implode. Because history shows us that even the most over-engineered, foolproof royal death plans can and do end in complete disaster.
Like big time.
And that's not even the wildest part. Because when Category 1 royal actually passed away 2 decades ago, the heavily rehearsed system didn't just glitch, it failed spectacularly.
And you know, the irony of Radio Caroline being the station to accidentally kill off the king recently is just incredibly thick when you dive into their specific history.
Oh my gosh, yes. Let's talk about their history.
Radio Caroline was not built to be a mouthpiece for the crown. They were founded in 1964 as a literal rogue pirate radio station.
A pirate radio station.
To bypass the strict broadcasting monopolies and regulations of the UK government, they operated out of a ship anchored in international waters off the Essex coast.
They were the ultimate rebels.
Yeah.
They were broadcasting rock and pop music to millions of teenagers, completely defying the establishment. The government tried to shut them down, they passed laws against them, and the station just kept broadcasting from the high seas.
And to see them now, decades later, acting as the accidental trigger for the most buttoned-up, strictly regulated establishment protocol in existence is just wild.
It's like a legendary anti-establishment punk rocker suddenly becoming the strictest hall monitor in the school, and then accidentally pulling the fire alarm and evacuating the entire building.
It perfectly illustrates how completely these stations have been absorbed into the modern, digitized broadcast network. They traded the freedom of the pirate ship for the security of the automated playout system.
But as we've seen, that automation is incredibly fragile. Which brings us to the astonishing breakdown of these grand plans in 2002.
Yes, the 2002 disaster.
Right, let's look at the death of the Queen Mother. By 2002, Independent Radio News, IRN, had everything in place. They had the centralized hub, the network of commercial stations waiting for the signal, the protocols locked down.
Everything was ready.
The Queen Mother passes away. Buckingham Palace makes the official announcement. The entire machinery of national mourning begins to turn. IRN's job is simple but critical. They need to trigger the audio obituary alarm exactly 8 minutes before their 6 p.m. bulletin.
8 minutes.
This pre-roll data pulse is what tells their massive network of commercial stations to automatically fade out their local music and switch to the national feed to break the news.
It is the moment of truth for the entire automated infrastructure. But instead of executing the obituary protocol, an editor in the control room simply pressed the wrong macro key on the keyboard.
One slipped finger. That is all it took. Instead of firing the obituary trigger, they click the macro for a standard everyday news bulletin.
Whoop.
And because that specific electronic handshake didn't happen, the remote servers at the local stations never received the command to switch over.
The result was an absolute blackout of information. 258 commercial radio stations across the UK, including massive flagship stations like Classic FM and Capital Radio in London, missed the breaking news entirely.
So what were they playing?
While the BBC and the television networks were broadcasting solemn tributes, millions of commercial radio listeners were still listening to upbeat pop music and advertisements.
Completely oblivious.
Completely oblivious to the fact that a major historical event had just occurred.
It was an unparalleled embarrassment for the network. The editor, John Goodell, had to send out an incredibly painful, groveling apology memo to all 258 station managers. He admitted the failure was an, quote, enormous cock-up.
That is such a British way to put it.
It really is. He had to explain that all the millions of pounds invested in technology and training were undone by a single mistyped keystroke in the heat of the moment.
Which highlights the exact clash between the expectation of the monarchy and the reality of broadcasting. On one side, you have the crown, which operates on the expectation of flawless, majestic pageantry. Perfection. When they plan a royal funeral, every single step is calculated. We are talking about precisely timed 41-gun salutes, velvet cushions positioned to the millimeter.
Lead-lined coffins with false lids.
Yes, designed specifically to hold the weight of the crown jewel securely. It is the absolute perfection of military and institutional timing.
And on the other side of that equation, you have a stressed-out broadcast editor in a windowless room staring at a glaring monitor whose hand slips by half an inch.
Right.
The majestic pageantry is entirely dependent on a messy, fallible human being not clicking the wrong mouse button.
And this vulnerability isn't restricted to the commercial sector either. The BBC, with all its prestige and RAQS alarms, is just as susceptible to human error.
Oh, absolutely. What happened in 2015?
So in 2015, they were running one of their routine, highly secretive dress rehearsals for how they would eventually report Queen Elizabeth's death. A BBC journalist, who apparently didn't realize it was an internal simulation, accidentally tweeted that the Queen had died.
Oh my goodness.
The panic that caused was global and instantaneous. It created such an immediate uproar that the notoriously tight-lipped Buckingham Palace actually had to break their own protocols and issue a rapid public statement just to confirm the Queen was alive.
They had to say she was just at a routine doctor's appointment.
Yeah. It proves that the foolproof systems are inherently flawed because of their complexity. You build a massive, interconnected network to ensure absolute dignity and coordinated respect across the nation, but that very complexity becomes your biggest liability.
A single point of failure.
A glitching playout system, a misclicked macro, a misunderstood internal memo, any of it has the power to plunge the entire nation into accidental mourning. Or, as we saw in 2002, cause hundreds of stations to completely ignore a real historical passing.
Stay tuned and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. We are constantly digging into the hidden layers of how media shapes the narrative around the biggest names in the world.
You know, if we pull back and connect all of this to the bigger picture, it leaves us with a deeply unsettling question about how we process major events today.
I agree. What's your takeaway?
If a simple line of rogue code at a former pirate radio station can instantaneously hijack the airwaves, play the national anthem, and enforce 15 minutes of dead air, what does that say about our reliance on automated systems to dictate our emotional reality?
We've essentially built these incredibly complex digital tripwires to tell us when to grieve. We're handing over the reins of our collective mourning to servers and pre-programmed algorithms.
Exactly. In an age of hyper-fast information, where playout systems run our media and AI aggregates our news, are we losing the human common sense that station manager Peter Moore begged for in his apology? When a machine is solely responsible for telling us that history has changed, we lose the human friction that verifies reality. We are trusting the system to feel the weight of the moment for us.
And as we've seen, the system doesn't feel anything. It just executes a command.
It's a sobering thought.
It really is.
Yeah.
We expect tragedy to be delivered with the warmth of human empathy, but more often than not, it's just a dormant file waiting for an IP trigger to wake it up.
You've been listening to Starscope Report, where Jordan and Jamie uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.